Hello you lovely lot, my name is Max and welcome back to my YouTube channel and the very first Nottingham Forest Premier League match preview of the season, where today we're going to be discussing our away trip to St James's Park against Newcastle United. The format of these match previews is as follows. We start with a bit of a brief discussion, give some context to our position. We then dive into the stats, talking about some of the key players and how the team as a whole is performing. We then move into some tactics, talking about how the team will play on the day, followed by my prediction for the scoreline on the day. So before we do any of that, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And with that being said, let's start our match preview for our away trip to Newcastle United. So as usual, we start by giving a bit of context to our opposition, and last season was a weird one for Newcastle United, famously changing owner halfway through the season, spending most of the first half of the season in the relegation zone before launching their way up the table under new manager Eddie Howe, getting the best out of those new January signings and finishing in a very respectable 11th position. They started the season playing some torrid football under Steve Bruce. They couldn't make something out of anything and eventually replaced him with Eddie Howe, who made a much better job of getting the best out of the talent and in the end was playing a much more attractive style of football that better indoctrinated the fans. And this shift in style saw the former Bournemouth man win 13 of his 28 games in charge of the Magpies, including against Leicester and Arsenal during the stretch at the end of the season, two of the better sides in the Premier League last campaign, as well as going on a 9-game unbeaten run between Christmas and the beginning of March. So now we have a bit of context for this Newcastle side. Let's delve into the numbers a little bit and talk about what kind of a side they are and what actually made them the 11th best side in the Premier League last season. Newcastle started the season very poorly in front of goal, but the appointment of Eddie Howe would significantly improve them in the final third. They went from the 5th lowest scorers in the division to about league average by the end of the campaign, as well as going from the 2nd lowest XG generated to again about league average by the end of the season. Defensively, they had also made some really big strides forward. At the time of Howe's appointment, they had conceded the 2nd most goals, both from expected goals and goals actually conceded. But this would again go to about league average by the end of the campaign. Neither goals for or against were particularly significant improvements, but they were decent and showed genuine improvement in the side by the end of the season. For me, the defensive part of that was the most impressive. I've never really associated Eddie Howe as a defensive-minded coach, but the fact he was able to get that defence playing at a better level of football, from going to about relegation kind of form to about league average, was very impressive and he deserves a lot of credit for it. Another thing Howe deserves a lot of credit for is maximising the talent in that squad, including two of the players we're going to discuss in a bit more detail now, their Brazilian midfield duo, Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes. Firstly, it could be argued that the arrival of Bruno Guimaraes was really the turning point in Newcastle's season. They only lost 5 of the 17 league games that he played, and he even managed to nab himself 5 goals in those 17 league appearances. He's probably one of the most well-rounded midfielders in the Premier League at the moment as well, comfortably in the top 10% of midfielders for tackles and pressures when defending. And on the ball, he's in the top 10% of midfielders for progressive actions completed as well as dribbles. So it's pretty solid all round. And then we have Joelinton, basically a brand new man under Eddie Howe. When compared against midfielders, Joelinton was very impressive, ranking in the top 25% of midfielders for defensive actions completed and the top 15% for progressive passes received and touches in the opposition box, suggesting he was a threat in the defensive third as well as the final third. Both he and Howe deserve a lot of credit from turning him into a very average striker to basically one of the best ball-winning midfielders in the Premier League at the moment, and he complements the midfield options in that Newcastle side exceptionally. Speaking of which, I feel like now's a better time than ever to start talking about the tactics behind Newcastle and how they improved on the field under Eddie Howe. And to do this, we're going to shift over to the tactics board. Prior to Eddie Howe's arrival, Newcastle were playing under Steve Bruce a very boring, very flat 5-3-2 formation that sat in a low and mid block that had no form of engagement and basically sat back trying to congest the box and break forward on the counter-attack, using the likes of Alan Saint-Maximin and Miguel Almiron to progress them up the field on the counter. Since Howe came in, they really tried to shift to this 4-3-3 shape, a lot more of a modern shape and a bit closer to what Howe was playing at Bournemouth. And they're also being a lot more engaging as a side. If you look at passes per defensive action, Newcastle have gone from 15 under Steve Bruce to 13 under Eddie Howe. Not really a market improvement, but genuine progression again in this side. And they're taking baby steps from quite a defensive side to an attacking side, and that's something that can't be done overnight. There has been a market improvement for me in the midfield, and this is ideally how it would shape up. Guimaraes sitting in that number 6 position, offering ball progression and really solid defensive numbers, probably the most well-rounded of these 3 midfielders midfield options. Joelinton being the solid ball winner in there, really solid in the tackle and able to progress things through simple passes and little dribbles. And then Joe Willock offering really good box-to-box runs, really good late runs into the final third and into the box where he's a bit more of a goal threat than the other two. They are still very reliant on Alan Saint-Maximin down the left in terms of ball progression, coming deep, showing for the ball and sending it upfield. But they also have Ryan Fraser and Kieran Trippier down the right, who offer a little bit more balance to the side in terms of progression and chance creation, giving it a bit more balance on the other side. And of course, their defence is completely new look. All 5 of them, including the goalkeeper, recently signed over the last 12 months or so, likely to look like Kieran Trippier, who's going to attack, offering really aggressive runs up and down the right hand side as Ryan Fraser cuts inside. Sven Botman and Dan Burn, 2 very solid defenders. Botman probably a little bit more solid technically at getting the ball out and progressing play, but Dan Burn a very solid Premier League standard defender. And then Matty Targett, not as aggressive at getting forward as a Kieran Trippier, probably going to offer a little bit more cover, tucking in alongside and creating a sort of orthodox back 3 as Saint-Maximin basically carries that left side in terms of ball progression and chance creation. And of course Nick Pope, probably one of the most consistent goalkeepers in the Premier League over the last half decade. Not the best with the ball at his feet, but solid enough for a mid-table side and a marked improvement at what they had at the moment. Now, in terms of how Forest can capitalise, we've mentioned it already, Kieran Trippier is really going to try and be as aggressive as possible, getting up and down that right flank. And Nottingham Forest are going to really want to expose this right-hand space with the likes of Wonyi and Brennan Johnson. Their powerful running in behind the back line is going to be very important. It's very much going to be Newcastle dominating the game in terms of possession and Nottingham Forest trying to counter and use the space and attacking presence we have in the forward line to stretch the back line of Newcastle. Owonyi is a really good runner into these channels, so I wouldn't be surprised if we're given a little bit more free license to him to run into those areas, get in behind Kieran Trippier when he gets forward and offer those really good runs that he does where he can then get the ball into the box, the likes of Brennan or Lingard. Overall, Newcastle offer a really interesting first test for our opening day of the Premier League campaign. Nottingham Forest playing a team who are still in transition, still finding their feet under their new manager Eddie Howe, and I think will potentially be there for the picking as their new signings try and gel with each other. For me, the most important player on the day for Nottingham Forest is going to be Moussa Niakhaté. I'm assuming he's probably going to be starting in that back 3, of course, making his first appearance in the Premier League is very important, but Newcastle are going to try and suffocate us, creating overloads on the sides and generally try and dominate the game in terms of possession. And Moussa Niakhaté's ability to pick the ball up in defence, bypass the midfield with the amazing range of passing he's got, and get the ball into the channels for the forwards to run onto is going to be very important. Not necessarily kick and chase, but very much a sense of controlled counter-attacking and direct football, and I think he's going to be very important to that. In terms of result, I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest on the day. Yes, I'm being slightly biased, but this Newcastle team is still in transition. They're still finding their feet, and I don't think they quite have their identity as a side yet under Eddie Howe, and potentially could be there for the picking for Nottingham Forest. I think it's going to be very important that we are as aggressive as possible in the final third, look to press them as much as possible, and more importantly, use our new signings to the best effect and get them really good experience in the Premier League, which a lot of them haven't got. Of course, so let me know what you think the scoreline is going to be in the comment section down below. Do you think we're going to be picking up our first win of the season, or do you think Newcastle is maybe a test too far for this Forest side at the moment? Answers as always in the comment section. And whilst you're down there, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the return of the match previews. And with that being said, thank you very much for watching, Reds. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the match. I will catch you later.